Shikonoko noko noko gosh dan dan. 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 Shikonoko noko noko gosh dan. Please. Nokotan, please. It's been like 2 months. And it just hasn't stopped. It just keeps going. Please, God, Nokotan, please. Just let it stop. It never ends. It just goes on forever. Please. Please, Nokotan. I want to see my family again, please. Please. I haven't talked a lot about comedy anime on this channel, and honestly, that's kind of a shame. Some of the most legendary series of all time are in fact comedy and gag focused. Obviously, most people like to laugh, so that makes sense, but the thing that's always impressed me about not just anime like these, but comedy in general, is that comedy is one of the most subjective things of all time. So I imagine writing a successful comedy series is just about the hardest thing in the world. Like, what is funny? It's gonna vary from person to person. Something that comes off as humorous to one person might be annoying or bland to another person. And that's not even taking into account things like age, background, or culture. Factors that can greatly affect the way someone perceives comedy. So when a series like this is able to garner a legendary status, the likes of Gintama, The Disastrous Life of Saiki K, or Konosuba, I'm always impressed because it's just a testament to how talented the creators are to overcome the hurdles that is that subjectivity. A feat that I also think has been achieved by the topic of today's video, my dear friend Nokotan. I'm sure none of you need me to tell you what this anime is. It's almost a guarantee that you've seen the memes associated with it. That being said, if you somehow don't know what this is, my dear friend Nokotan began its life in Kodansha's shonen magazine Edge in November 2019. Written by manga author Oshio Shio, my dear friend Nokotan explores the life of, well, Nokotan, a human-deer hybrid who one day shows up at school and begins to cause all kinds of torment for our main protagonist Koshitan, the student council president. This involves freaking her out with her bizarre deer abilities, leaving deer senbei crackers all over her desk, and worst of all, potentially revealing the fact that Koshitan was known as the Tiger of Hino at her previous school, a notorious delinquent you did not want to cross paths with, a secret that could potentially destroy her reputation. Eventually, the two start the quote-unquote deer club and hijinks ensue. Now, I know that based on that description, Nokotan probably sounds like a fairly straightforward comedic slice of life anime, but let me tell you, Nokotan is anything but straightforward. The best way I can describe Nokotan is the ridiculousness of something like Nichijou if Nichijou had deer in it, or at least more deer than it already had. Stuff like Nokotan's antlers completely obliterating the wall as she makes her way into the class, the student council fighting a bizarre antler creature and deciding to make it their pet, and Nokotan offering Koshitan one of her antlers as a weapon, Koshitan declaring it useless, throwing it on top of the roof of the school gym, only for the antler to then completely annihilate everything, yet somehow leaving zero casualties is some of the craziness you can expect from my dear friend Nokotan. One of my absolute favorite forms of humor is surrealist comedy. Basically, where everything is absurd and anything can happen. And Nokotan embraces this form of comedy lovingly. There are so many situations where when you step back and just look at what's on the screen in front of you, you can't help but laugh at how dumb it is. And the best part is that the show is very aware of how dumb it is, to the point that the characters basically know they're in a show and will constantly comment on it. I mean, at one point, Nokotan just pulls out a monitor playing last week's episode so that she can make a point. Like, I mean, that's just so great. Speaking of self-awareness, this show is filled with pop culture references. In fact, as I'm writing this script, episode 8 came out not too long ago and straight up has a scene where they mimic the Smash Bros. Character reveal template. I basically screamed when they showed this. I can't lie. This is actually something I could see as kind of an issue for some people because obviously referential humor is not always going to be understood by everyone. And when you add on the caveat that a lot of the references made in the show are, Japanese, that only blurs the lines even more. And while we're on the topic of criticisms, something that I've noticed, not just with Nokotan, but a lot of comedy anime in general, is that often characters will comment directly on why something is absurd or funny. Like, they kind of have to spell it out in case you don't get it. Granted, this isn't something that happens constantly, and I really don't mind it that much. It's basically just a nitpick. I've kind of gotten used to it in anime at this point, but it does pop up every now and then, and I've always found it kind of strange. Like, I really feel like Nokotan doesn't need to do that because it's already hilarious, and the character's reaction alone to certain things should be enough to inform the audience of a joke's humor. Like, they don't really need to actually explain the joke, but again, from what I've seen, this is just cultural differences, and at the end of the day, Nokotan's surrealism more than makes up for it. That being said, surrealist comedy, while being one of the funniest forms of comedy, I also feel is probably one of the most difficult to pull off. After all, it takes not only a lot of creativity and imagination, but also a lot of discipline and balance. I feel like if you go too far, it's very easy to fall into the lol so random cringe territory that was so abundant back in the mid-2000s. However, Nokotan thankfully knows how to write good surrealist comedy. While yes, Nokotan's humor is off the wall and insane, the show also remembers one of the most important elements of writing humor. That humor does not write the characters write the humor. I think that one of the biggest traps that a lot of comedy shows fall into, particularly long-running ones, is that eventually the integrity of some of the most beloved characters becomes compromised. Look at characters like SpongeBob SquarePants and Homer Simpson. Both are beloved and iconic, but there's a very fair argument that their personalities have been exaggerated and altered greatly throughout the years for the sake of comedy. They've been molded to fit around whatever joke the writer wants to tell, and it should be the other way around. A joke is going to be a lot funnier when the audience can realistically see that character being in that situation or doing that funny thing. And thankfully, so much great comedy comes from Nokotan's characters because they're so well defined and fill several comedic niches. For example, let's take a character like Koshitan. Koshitan is a lot like the Squidward of this show in that she's pretty much the only sane person in a world of nonsense and weirdos. There's this really great scene where Nokotan is basically just hanging out with a bunch of deer in a zoo exhibit, and nobody really seems to notice that she isn't a regular deer and just accepts it at face value. And Koshitan is just like super weirded out by it. Oh my god, this show was so great. Koshitan is basically the audience surrogate in this regard, constantly commenting on how ridiculous everything is while also suffering because of this show's ridiculousness. And while we're going ahead and making SpongeBob analogies, if Koshitan is Squidward, that would make Nokotan SpongeBob. Like I said before, my dear friend Nokotan is primarily a surrealist comedy, and while surrealist comedy will always be great, its hilarity is only multiplied further when combined with animation. Of course, surrealist comedy can work in live action, and I honestly think that the stilted nature of reality is what makes that so hilarious. But a lot of times what you can do with surrealism is limited by what you can do in real life. With animation, there is basically no limit to what you can do. Characters can brush off massive injuries, defy the laws of physics, and contort their bodies to Looney Tune levels of absurdity. And I just have to say, the realistic 3D rendered deer standing next to the more eccentric 2D anime characters is just so great. I feel like in any other anime, this would be seen as jarring and weird. However, jarring and weird is the kind of thing that defines Nokotan as a character. And this is exemplified even more by her amazing character design. Now, just looking at Nokotan's design, sure, aside from maybe the antlers, she's really not that amazing. She's cute, but also kind of plain, which could be seen as a detriment. But considering her role in the show, it really works. The mundanity of her design adds to the absurdity of the things she does and makes them even more funny. That such a simple looking character is doing all of this zany stuff. Plus, I mean, Nokotan in general is just a very simple character personality wise, so it's best that her design exemplifies this aspect of her character. Plus, again, you have the antlers, which act as a great balance to her mundanity, as well as a great indicator of who she is when her body morphs into more exaggerated exaggerated caricatures. Her and Koshitan are undoubtedly the two MVPs of this anime. I feel when they're combined together, the show is at its absolute best because this is just a comedy duo that will always stand the test of time. Chaos and control mixed together to form a perfect recipe for hilarity. And that's why Nokotan for me is one of the most standout anime of 2024. There were several moments in this show where I genuinely had to pause for minutes on end because if I didn't, I would miss huge chunks because of my hysterical laughter. That's just how funny my dear friend Nokotan is. But I want to know what you guys think. Did you guys also find Nokotan hilarious, or did you think the humor fell flat? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video and you want to see more, be sure to like and subscribe. It helps the channel greatly. And if you're in the mood for more videos, we recently just put out The Rise of Frieren, and what do you know? There it is right there on the screen for you to click on. Isn't that such a coincidence? Oh my God. With that being said, again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.